A single decision from Beijing has sent shockwaves through global markets, threatening to reshape the future of American manufacturing. On February 4, 2025, China tightened its grip on essential materials, striking at the heart of U.S. automobile production. This isn't just another trade dispute, it's an economic earthquake that threatens decades of industrial cooperation. The roots of this crisis stretch back to the 1980s, when American companies first ventured into Chinese markets. The Beijing Jeep Corporation emerged as a pioneer, marking the beginning of what would become one of history's most powerful economic partnerships. But now, as China flexes its economic muscle in response to U.S. tariffs, that partnership stands on the brink of collapse. Before we dive deeper into this developing crisis and its implications for global industry, don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on this critical story.
There really was no relationship between the U.S. and China until the Nixon-Kissinger visits in the early 70s. And then the really huge change took place in 2001 when the U.S. supported China coming into the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And from that point on, the relationship was very much a win-win. So trade exploded between the U.S. and China. What I'm talking about is China obviously leveraging its low-cost labor was the beneficiary of a huge increase in its export trade. The U.S. was also a winner because the U.S. was able to stock its shelves with much lower cost, high quality goods from China that enabled the U.S. to keep down.
The transformation of U.S.-China trade relations represents one of the most remarkable economic stories in modern history. When China entered the World Trade Organization in December 2001, few could have predicted the seismic shifts ahead. Within just 5 years, trade between these economic giants exploded from a modest $5 billion to a staggering $230 billion, propelling China into position as America's second-largest trading partner. This wasn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It marked a fundamental restructuring of global commerce. As Chinese factories hummed with activity and American consumers embraced affordable imports, a new economic order took shape. The automotive sector stood at the heart of this transformation, weaving together American innovation with Chinese manufacturing might. But beneath this surface of prosperity, fault lines were forming that would eventually shake the very foundation of this economic partnership.
Just slightly, the House of Representatives yesterday adopted legislation,
Denying China permanent normal trade status simply would deprive American companies and American workers of the full benefits of China's concessions, the favorable market access and dispute settlement that our European, Japanese, and other competitors will take advantage of.
Taiwan. And as I understand it, the guts of the issue, which is mandated in the TRA, which said
the annual China trade vote has not been an effective instrument. It simply has affirmed our trading relationship with China for 20 years in a row. What permanent normal trade relations for China will do is to get us out of the cycle we are now in, where the future of China's trade comes up every single year for a divisive and not very effective vote. All the authority that we need is in the act you helped draft. This agreement is not, by itself, a human rights policy for the United States. We must and we will continue to speak out on behalf of people in China who are persecuted for their political and religious beliefs. Which you quite presciently helped to draft. There are always, as Lee will attest to,
Today's automotive crisis reveals a hidden web of economic dependencies that most Americans never see. China's dominance in the U.S. auto industry runs deeper than assembly lines and finished vehicles. As the fourth largest supplier of auto parts to American manufacturers, China's influence touches every vehicle rolling off U.S. production lines. But the real power lies in what doesn't make headlines: China's near monopoly on the essential building blocks of modern manufacturing. From the steel and aluminum that form vehicle frames to the rare earth elements powering electric vehicles, China holds the keys to America's automotive future. The critical materials, lithium, cobalt, graphite, that drive the electric vehicle revolution flow almost exclusively through Chinese supply chains. This isn't by accident. It's the result of decades of strategic planning, But beneath these supply chains lies an even more complex story of currency manipulation. The growing $370 billion trade deficit between the US and China isn't just about who sells more goods. It's about the carefully orchestrated dance of currency values. When the yuan stays artificially low compared to the dollar, Chinese products become irresistibly cheap for American consumers, while US goods remain expensive in Chinese markets. This imbalance didn't happen naturally. The Chinese government has been quietly pulling economic levers, buying and selling US dollars to maintain their advantage. It's a sophisticated strategy that has transformed China from a manufacturing partner into an economic puppet master, controlling not just what goes into American cars, but the very foundation of US-China trade. This deliberate manipulation of currency and supply chains has finally brought tensions to a breaking point. As we'll see, what started as a trade dispute has evolved into something far more dangerous, a battle for control of the global automotive industry's future.
China's currency policies is a key factor in our economic relationship. China does not yet have the currency policy we want it to have and that it needs. Treasury's foreign exchange report clearly states that China's cautious approach to exchange rate reform exacerbates distortions in its domestic economy and impedes the adjustment of international imbalance.
The seeds of today's trade war were planted in 2017, when President Trump launched an investigation that would expose the hidden costs of America's economic relationship with China. At its heart lay a practice that had quietly drained U.S. technological advantage for decades: forced technology transfer. American companies entering Chinese markets faced an impossible choice: share their proprietary technology with Chinese partners or lose access to the world's largest consumer market. This compulsory sharing of trade secrets went beyond simple business partnerships. It systematically stripped American firms of their competitive edge, transferring decades of innovation to Chinese competitors. The investigation revealed a pattern of intellectual property violations that had cost U.S. companies billions in lost advantages and future opportunities. Trump's response began with targeted measures: tariffs on solar panels and washing machines. But the real earthquake came with his announcement of global tariffs: 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. While these applied worldwide, their true target was clear. The administration cited national security concerns, arguing that dependence on foreign materials threatened America's ability to produce essential defense equipment and infrastructure. China's response was swift and calculated. Beijing imposed retaliatory tariffs on 128 U.S. products, carefully selecting targets that would maximize political pressure, from fruits and nuts to pork products, affecting $3 billion in trade. This triggered an escalating cycle of retaliation, with the U.S. imposing 25% tariffs on $34 billion of Chinese goods, only to face equivalent measures from Beijing. By mid-2019, both economic giants began to recognize the devastating costs of their trade war. At the G20 summit in Osaka, Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping stepped back from the brink, agreeing to restart negotiations. Their efforts culminated in the Phase 1 trade agreement of January 2020, a deal that promised to reshape the economic landscape. China committed to an ambitious target: purchasing an additional $200 billion in U.S. goods and services over 2 years, while pledging to halt intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. For a moment, peace seemed possible, but like many diplomatic promises, this one proved fragile. The calm shattered in 2022, when the Department of Commerce implemented new export controls, targeting China's access to semiconductors and advanced computing technology. The real bombshell dropped during Trump's campaign trail in early 2025, when he promised tariffs of at least 60% on Chinese imports if re-elected. True to his word, upon returning to office on February 4th, 2025, Trump imposed a 10% tariff across all Chinese imports. The justification was twofold: China's failure to meet its $200 billion purchase commitment during 2020-2021, and mounting concerns over China's role in the fentanyl trade through Mexico and Canada. This wasn't just about punishing past failures. It was about reshaping the future of U.S.-China trade relations. This time, however, China's response would prove far more devastating than anyone anticipated. China's retaliation unfolded like a carefully orchestrated economic siege. Rather than matching U.S. tariffs with simple counter-tariffs, Beijing unleashed a comprehensive strategy designed to strike at multiple pressure points in the American economy. The first wave targeted U.S. energy exports: coal, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil, along with agricultural machinery and vehicles. Given China's massive consumer market, these restrictions alone sent tremors through U.S. industries. But Beijing was just warming up. In a move that sent Silicon Valley reeling, the Chinese government launched an antitrust investigation into Google, threatening one of America's tech giants in its crucial overseas market. Next came the targeting of U.S. fashion conglomerates with PVH Corp., owner of iconic brands Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, finding itself on China's unreliable entity list, effectively ending its operations in the world's largest consumer market. The knockout blow came on February 4th, when China revealed its most powerful weapon, control over critical minerals. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce announced a new licensing system for 20 essential materials. While not technically a ban, this bureaucratic barrier effectively gave China complete control over the flow of materials vital to U.S. manufacturing, particularly in the automotive sector. The impact was immediate and severe. U.S. auto manufacturers, already struggling with supply chain disruptions, now face the prospect of material shortages, skyrocketing costs, and intense competition for limited resources. More critically, this move threatened to derail the American electric vehicle revolution, which depends heavily on Chinese-controlled materials like rare earth elements, lithium, and graphite. China's export restrictions have triggered a chain reaction that extends far beyond U.S. borders, reshaping the global economic landscape. As American automobile manufacturers scramble for alternative material sources, the ripple effects are driving up prices worldwide. Nations with deep trade ties to the U.S. auto industry now face an uncomfortable choice: maintain their American partnerships at premium prices or pivot toward Chinese markets. The U.S. response reveals a dramatic shift in industrial strategy. Recognizing the vulnerability of single-source supply chains, American policymakers are forging new alliances with resource-rich nations. Partnerships with Canada and Australia are being fast-tracked, aimed at developing alternative supply routes for critical minerals. Meanwhile, domestic production is receiving unprecedented support, with companies like Brisbane-based Enovix securing over $1 billion in federal funding to develop synthetic graphite production. But China's move appears calculated for maximum long-term impact. By restricting these crucial materials, Beijing isn't just retaliating against tariffs, it's accelerating its own technological self-reliance. Chinese manufacturers are ramping up domestic electric vehicle production, positioning themselves to dominate the next generation of automotive technology. This strategic pivot threatens to leave U.S. manufacturers playing catch-up in the race for electric vehicle supremacy. The U.S. has countered with its own export controls, aiming to protect critical technologies vital to national security. Yet this defensive measure highlights a stark reality. In the interconnected world of global trade, economic battles create casualties far beyond their intended targets. The trade war's impact echoes through America's automotive boardrooms, transforming abstract policy into stark business reality. Ford CEO Jim Farley's declaration that "we have to beat China in a street fight" reflects the industry's growing recognition that competitive survival requires dramatic action. This isn't just corporate rhetoric, it's an acknowledgement that U.S. automakers face an existential challenge. At General Motors, the financial toll is already mounting. The company's December 2024 announcement of over $5 billion in charges related to Chinese ventures reveals the depth of market disruption. GM's leadership characterizes China's market as a race to the bottom, pointing to ruthless price competition that threatens traditional business models. The mining sector sees an opportunity in crisis. National Mining Association President Rich Nolan emphasizes the urgent need to rebuild America's mineral independence, calling for increased investment in domestic mining infrastructure and workforce development. American Elements CEO Michael Silver's warnings about geopolitical risks now seem prophetic as he advocates for aggressive cyber policies to protect and promote domestic production. Perhaps no figure better embodies the complexity of U.S.-China relations than Elon Musk. With Tesla's massive Shanghai manufacturing presence and his role as a key Trump administration advisor, Musk walks a precarious diplomatic tightrope. His position highlights the delicate balance American business leaders must strike between protecting Chinese investments and supporting U.S. economic interests. This chorus of industry voices underscores a crucial reality. America's automotive future hangs in the balance, and adaptation isn't just desirable. It's essential for survival. The road ahead for American automakers winds through uncertain territory. As companies rush to diversify supply chains and strengthen domestic production, they face a delicate balancing act, maintaining current operations while racing to build resilience against future disruption. This isn't just about surviving today's crisis. It's about reimagining the entire automotive industry for a new era of global competition. Yet this upheaval creates opportunities alongside challenges. As established industry leaders struggle to adapt, new players could emerge to reshape the automotive landscape. But the stakes couldn't be higher. Companies that fail to navigate this transition risk permanent obsolescence in an industry undergoing revolutionary change. The U.S. response to China's export controls remains incomplete, suggesting more economic turbulence ahead. For everyone connected to America's automotive future, Matisse, from policymakers and industry leaders to investors and consumers, staying informed becomes crucial as this situation continues to evolve. This trade war reminds us of an ancient truth. When economic giants clash, the reverberations affect everyone. The question isn't just whether U.S. automakers will overcome these challenges, but how this transformation will reshape global industry for generations to come. Share your thoughts on this developing story in the comments below. Will American automotive innovation prevail, or has China gained an insurmountable advantage? Don't forget to subscribe for ongoing coverage of this critical economic battle.